The fireworks had stopped at exactly 12:47 a.m., but Marcus Chen could still hear the screaming. It wasn't the joyful kind, not the champagne-drunk whooping of revelers stumbling home from Times Square watch parties. This was different, raw, primal, the kind of sound that came from somewhere deep in the human throat when something fundamental inside broke. Marcus pressed his face against the frosted window of his 6th-floor apartment in Hell's Kitchen, his breath fogging the glass. Outside, confetti still littered the empty street like colorful snow catching the orange glow of streetlights. The screaming echoed between the buildings, impossible to pinpoint. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. His phone showed 12:48 a.m., January 1st, 2024, the first minutes of the new year. He'd spent the last hour of 2023 alone with a bottle of cheap champagne watching the ball drop on his laptop, while his ex-girlfriend, as of 3 days ago, celebrated with friends he no longer recognized as his own. The scream came again. Closer this time. Or was it? The acoustics of the city played tricks, bouncing sound off glass and concrete until you couldn't trust your own ears. Marcus grabbed his phone thumb, hovering over 911. But what would he say? I heard screaming. In New York City on New Year's Eve, they'd laugh him off the line. Then he saw it. On the building across the street, in a window directly level with his own, a woman stood motionless. Her face was pressed against the glass, just like his. Even from this distance, even in the dim light, Marcus could see her mouth was open. Wide open. She was the one screaming. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before we dive into tonight's story, I need to ask, where are you watching this from? Are you alone? Because after what happened to Marcus Chen on New Year's Eve 2024, you might want to keep the lights on. If you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me your own New Year's horror stories. Trust me, you're going to need someone to talk to after this one. Marcus Chen was 28 years old, and his life had been falling apart in that particularly millennial way, slowly, then all at once. 3 months ago, he'd been laid off from his marketing job at a tech startup that burned through its Series B funding like kindling. 2 months ago, his mother had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, forgetting his name more often than she remembered it. And 3 days ago, his girlfriend Emma had ended their 4-year relationship with a text message that read simply, "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." He'd moved to New York 5 years earlier with dreams that now felt embarrassingly naive. The apartment was a studio that cost $2,400 a month, a 5th-floor walk-up he'd been subletting since September, when he could no longer afford his share of the 2-bedroom in Williamsburg he'd shared with Emma. His landlord was a ghost who communicated only through Venmo requests and passive-aggressive notes taped to doors. Hell's Kitchen had a reputation. Not the sanitized, gentrified version tourists saw, but the real thing underneath the history. This had been Westie's territory once, back when the Irish mob ran the waterfront. Buildings here had witnessed things. Marcus's own apartment building dated back to 1887, with the kind of thick walls that held onto sounds and smells from decades past. Sometimes late at night, he'd hear footsteps in the hallway that stopped just outside his door. The radiator clanked with a rhythm that seemed almost purposeful. The neighborhood transformed on New Year's Eve. Usually 9th Avenue buzzed with restaurant crowds and theatergoers, but tonight, it had been different. By 11 p.m., the streets had emptied in an almost unnatural way, everyone migrating toward the crystallized chaos of Times Square or retreating into private parties. Marcus had considered joining a meetup group celebration in the East Village, but the thought of making small talk with strangers while pretending his life wasn't imploding felt exhausting, so he'd stayed in. Ordered Thai food that arrived cold. Opened the champagne at 11:45 p.m. Watched the ball drop on his laptop with the sound muted because he couldn't stand Ryan Seacrest's forced enthusiasm. The fireworks had started at midnight, exactly not the official display, but the illegal ones locals set off from rooftops and fire escapes. For 47 minutes, the night sky above Manhattan had been a war zone of light and sound. Marcus had stood at his window, watching the colors paint the low-hanging clouds, feeling the bass of distant music thrumming through the building's bones. His apartment faced east, looking across 47th Street at the back of another residential building. In 5 months of living here, he'd never paid much attention to the windows across from his. They were just rectangles of light, brief glimpses into other people's lives. A flicker of TV glow, someone walking past, backlit by a lamp, curtains drawn or left carelessly open. But tonight, in those final seconds before 12:47 a.m., Marcus had noticed something odd. Several windows in the building across the street had gone dark simultaneously. Not gradually, the way lights turn off when people go to bed. All at once, like a circuit breaker tripping. And then, in the silence that followed the last firecracker's echo, the screaming had begun. Now, as Marcus stared at the woman in the window, he felt something cold settle in his stomach. Something was very, very wrong. The woman across the street wasn't moving. Her mouth was open in that endless scream, but from this distance, maybe 40 feet, Marcus couldn't actually hear her voice anymore. Or maybe she'd stopped screaming. Maybe she'd never started. The city's ambient noise had returned, a distant siren, the hydraulic sigh of a bus, someone's car alarm wailing 3 blocks over. Marcus fumbled for his phone, opened the camera app, and zoomed in. Through the digital lens, the woman's face came into sharper focus. She was middle-aged, maybe late 40s, with dark hair falling loose around her face. Her hands were pressed flat against the window on either side of her head. Behind her, the apartment looked dark, not the normal darkness of a turned-off light, but something deeper, a void. He took a screenshot, his hand shaking slightly. The image was grainy, pixelated, but it would be proof of that someone was screaming. That wasn't a crime. Hell, it wasn't even unusual in New York. But then the woman's hands moved. She dragged them down the glass slowly, deliberately, leaving no streak marks, no condensation trail, just the movement of palms against glass. When her hands reached shoulder height, she stopped. Her head tilted to the left, far enough that Marcus could see the unnatural angle of it. No one held their head like that, not unless something was broken. Marcus's thumb found Emma's contact. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Emma. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." The chipper voice of someone who'd recorded it during happier times. "Emma, it's me. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm seeing something really weird, and I don't know who else to call. There's a woman across the street, and I think she might need help, or I'm losing my mind. Probably that. Call me back if you... Never mind. Sorry. Happy New Year." He hung up feeling pathetic. Of course she wouldn't call back. Marcus went to his door, pressing his ear against it. The hallway was silent. He opened it slowly, the hinges creaking in a way they never did during the day. The corridor stretched left and right, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights that gave everything a sickly green tinge. 5 other apartments on this floor. All doors closed. No sound from any of them. "Hello?" His voice sounded small. "Does anyone else hear that?" Nothing. Not even the shuffle of someone getting up to check the irritated what of a disturbed neighbor. Marcus went back inside, closing the door, but not locking it. Some irrational part of him thought he might need to run. He returned to the window. The woman was gone. The window across the street was empty now, just a dark rectangle reflecting the city's ambient light. Marcus blinked hard, wondering if he'd imagined the whole thing. The champagne had been cheap, and he'd drunk most of the bottle on an empty stomach. Maybe stress and alcohol had conspired to manufacture a hallucination, but then he saw movement in a different window. 1 floor down, same building, a child. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing in profile. She wore what looked like pajamas with cartoon characters on them. As Marcus watched, she turned slowly to face the window to face him and raised one small hand in a wave. The gesture was too slow, too deliberate. Like someone who'd learned to wave by watching a video mimicking the motion without understanding its meaning. Marcus didn't wave back. The girl's smile spread wider than should have been possible, splitting her face in 2. Her hand remained raised, frozen mid-wave, as she tilted her head at the same unnatural angle the woman had shown. Jesus Christ! Marcus stumbled backward from the window, his hip hitting the counter of his kitchenette. His phone clattered to the floor. When he looked again, the girl was gone too. His phone vibrated. A text message. For a wild, hopeful second, he thought it might be Emma, but the number was unknown. "Do you see us?" Marcus stared at the screen. He hadn't given anyone his number recently. The text didn't show a contact name, just the digits 212-555-0147. Another message arrived. "We see you, Marcus." His hands went numb. The phone almost slipped from his grip. How did they know his name who was sending these? A third message. "Window number 609. That's you. We've been watching. Happy New Year." Marcus's apartment number was 609. His building didn't have a doorman, no security system beyond a broken intercom. Anyone could walk in off the street. The front door lock had been broken since before he moved in. He went to his door, and this time he did lock it, the deadbolt and the chain. Then he pushed his small dining table against it for good measure. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound that made him wince. Back at the window, Marcus forced himself to look at the building across the street. More windows had gone dark. He counted them 5 on different floors, scattered across the building's face like missing teeth in a smile. In one of the lit windows, he could see someone moving, living their life normally, unaware of whatever was happening around them. Or maybe they were aware. Maybe they were just better at ignoring it. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "Count the dark windows, Marcus. Count them all. 1 for each person who didn't make it to midnight. 1 for each resolution that died before it could be spoken. 1 for each wish that went wrong." Marcus looked at the time, 1:03 a.m. 16 minutes since the screaming started. It felt like hours. He opened his laptop, pulled up Google, and typed, "Hell's Kitchen apartment building, deaths New Year's Eve." The search returned news articles about a different year, a different tragedy. Nothing recent, nothing tonight. He tried 47th Street Building History, Manhattan. More articles. A piece about the neighborhood's transformation. Something about a renovation project that had been delayed. Then buried on the 3rd page of results, a blog post from 2019. The Cursed Buildings of Hell's Kitchen, Local Urban Legends. Marcus clicked it. The blog was defunct, the design dated, but the post loaded. Grainy photos of several buildings. He scrolled down and felt his stomach drop. There it was. The building across from his. The same dirty brick facade, the same pattern of windows. The caption read, "The Riverview Arms, site of the New Year's Eve massacre, 1987. Marcus's hands trembled as he scrolled through the blog post. The text was barely legible white font on a black background, written in that particular internet dialect of the late 2010s, all lowercase and peppered with ellipses. So the Riverview Arms has this reputation, right? Everyone who's lived in Hell's Kitchen long enough knows you don't move into that building, especially not on the east side facing 47th Street. The post went on to describe an incident from New Year's Eve, 1987. A tenant on the 6th floor, a man named Douglas Klein, had apparently experienced some kind of psychotic break. According to the blog, Klein had gone door to door in the building just after midnight, forcing his way into apartments. The post was vague on details, using phrases like allegedly and according to local rumors, but the implication was clear: people had died. Marcus searched for news articles from 1987. Nothing. Or rather, nothing specific. The New York Times archive showed a small piece from January 3rd, 1987. 3 dead in Hell's Kitchen incident. The article was brief, clinical, offering no details beyond confirming that police had responded to a disturbance at a residential building on West 47th Street. He tried the police scanner archives, court records, anything. All he found were gaps, suspicious absences of information for something that should have been major news. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Douglas Klein, apartment 614. He's still here. They're all still here. The ones who didn't survive midnight. Marcus's mouth went dry. He looked out the window again. The building across the street seemed darker now, as if more lights had gone out while he wasn't watching. Or maybe it was just his imagination, fear painting shadows where there were none. He called 911. The line rang 6 times before someone picked up. 911, what's your emergency? There's something wrong at the building across from mine. I think someone might be hurt. Or, I don't know. There was screaming, and I'm getting these weird texts. Sir, what's your location? 409 West 47th Street, apartment 609. But it's not me. It's the building across the street, the Riverview Arms. Are you in immediate danger? No, but... Is anyone in your immediate vicinity injured or in danger? Marcus hesitated. I don't know. I saw a woman screaming in a window and a child, but they disappeared and... Sir, this is New Year's Eve. We're receiving hundreds of calls. Unless you can confirm an active emergency, I need to keep this line clear. Have you been drinking tonight? The question hit like a slap. Yes, but that's not... I'm going to recommend you get some sleep. If you witness an actual crime in progress, call back. Otherwise, you can file a non-emergency report in the morning. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone. They thought he was drunk. Some paranoid guy seeing things because he'd had too much cheap champagne. And maybe they were right. Maybe his laptop screen flickered. Not the normal dimming of an idle computer, but a deliberate strobing. The blog post disappeared, replaced by a black screen. White text began appearing one character at a time, like someone was typing in real time. Hello, Marcus. He slammed the laptop shut. When he opened it again, 5 seconds later, the screen showed his normal desktop. The browser had closed completely. A sound in the hallway made him freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate moving past his door. He heard them reach the end of the corridor, then stop. A door opened, not his one of the other apartments. Mrs. Kowalski in 605, probably the elderly Polish woman, who sometimes left pierogi wrapped in foil outside his door. But Mrs. Kowalski had gone to her daughter's house in Astoria for New Year's. She'd told him so 3 days ago when he'd helped her carry groceries. The footsteps came back, heading in the opposite direction. Slower now, heavier. They stopped directly outside Marcus's door. He held his breath, staring at the crack beneath the door. No shadow, no movement. Just the sense of presence on the other side, something waiting, listening. A knock. 3 sharp raps that made Marcus jump. "Hello?" His voice cracked. "Who is it?" No answer. Just another 3 knocks, identical in rhythm and intensity. Marcus looked at his phone. He pulled up the building's group chat, a WhatsApp thread that usually consisted of complaints about the landlord and arguments about whose turn it was to clean the lobby. The last message was from 11:43 p.m., someone wishing everyone a happy new year. He typed, "Is anyone else awake? Someone's knocking on doors." The message showed 2 blue check marks, read, but no response. He tried texting individual neighbors. "Hey, are you hearing this?" Nothing. The knocking came again. This time it didn't stop at 3. It continued steady and insistent, the same rhythm over and over. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock, knock. Marcus grabbed a knife from the kitchenette, a cheap serrated blade he used for cutting vegetables. It felt absurd in his hand, like a prop from a horror movie. But it was something. "I'm calling the police!" he shouted at the door. "I mean it! Go away!" The knocking stopped. In the silence that followed, Marcus heard something worse, a voice, muffled, coming from somewhere in the building's walls or floors. It sounded like the woman from the window, that same raw, primal scream, but sustained impossibly long. No one could scream that long without taking a breath. His phone buzzed. The unknown number again. "Look out your window, Marcus. 6th floor. 4th window from the left." Marcus didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at him to stay away from that window, to crawl into bed and pull the covers over his head like a child hiding from monsters. But his feet moved on their own, carrying him across the small apartment. 6th floor, 4th window from the left. The apartment was lit now. Not with the warm glow of lamps or the cool blue of a TV, but with a harsh fluorescent brightness that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. Marcus could see inside clearly. A man stood in the center of the room. Middle-aged, wearing what looked like pajamas from another era, striped cotton, the kind his grandfather might have worn. The man's face was turned toward Marcus's window, and even from this distance, Marcus could see his eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too dark, reflecting nothing. The man raised his hand and pointed directly at Marcus. His mouth moved, forming words Marcus couldn't hear, but he could read lips well enough to make them out. "You're next." Then, in a movement too fast to follow, too fluid to be natural, the man was gone. Not walking away, not stepping out of view, just gone as if he'd never been there at all. Marcus stumbled backward, his hip hitting the corner of his coffee table. The knife clattered to the floor. His phone was buzzing non-stop, now message after message flooding in. Apartment 6 Vermont, Douglas Klein. He collected them. All the ones who were alone. All the ones no one would miss. It happens every year. The ones who don't make it to morning. The ones who watch the new year alone. Marcus tried to call Emma again. Voicemail. He tried his mother, forgetting for a moment that she wouldn't remember him anyway. Voicemail. He went through his contacts, calling everyone, anyone. None of them picked up. It was 1:47 a.m. on New Year's Day, and the whole world was drunk or asleep or celebrating, and he was alone with something that shouldn't exist. Another sound in the hallway. Not footsteps this time. Scratching, like fingernails on wood starting at one end of the corridor and moving slowly toward his door. Marcus grabbed his laptop, his phone, his keys. He didn't have a plan, but he knew he couldn't stay here. The scratching was getting closer. The lights in the hallway flickered. He could see it through the crack under his door. He pulled the table away from the door as quietly as he could, wincing at every scrape. Unlocked the chain. Turned the deadbolt. His hand on the doorknob was slick with sweat. The scratching stopped right outside. Marcus counted to 3 in his head, then yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. But the walls were covered in writing, scratched into the paint carved into the plaster. The same message repeated hundreds of times in handwriting that varied from line to line as if different people had written it. We didn't make it to morning. We didn't make it to morning. We didn't make it to morning. And at the end of the hallway, the stairwell door was opening slowly, its hinges screaming. Something was coming up. Marcus ran, not toward the stairs, toward them, whatever was climbing up from the darkness below. He ran in the opposite direction, toward the fire escape at the hall's far end. Behind him, he heard the stairwell door bang fully open, heard footsteps, multiple sets now, a shuffling, scraping cacophony that didn't sound human. The fire escape window was painted shut. Of course it was. This building probably hadn't passed an inspection since the Carter administration. Marcus grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it at the glass. The window shattered outward cold January air rushing in, carrying the smell of smoke and something else. Something rotten. He didn't look back. He climbed through the feeling glass bite into his palm and emerged onto the metal grating of the fire escape. 6 floors above the street, the city sprawled below him like a circuit board, all lights and geometry. The fire escape swayed under his weight, rust flaking off beneath his feet. Behind him, through this broken window, shapes moved in the hallway. He caught glimpses, a woman with her head at that impossible angle, a child with that too wide smile, a man in old-fashioned pajamas pointing at him with fingers that were too long. Marcus climbed down. His hands shook so badly, he almost lost his grip twice. The metal stairs rattled with each step, the sound echoing off the brick walls of the narrow alley. He was on the 4th floor landing when he heard them climbing out above him. No, no, no. The word became a mantra as he descended faster, taking steps 2 at a time. 3rd floor, 2nd floor. The ladder to the ground was still raised. Of course, it was 8 feet of empty air between him and the alley below. Marcus grabbed the ladder release. It was stuck, corroded. He pulled harder, putting his full weight into it. Metal shrieked against metal. Above him, the footsteps were on the 5th floor landing now. The whole fire escape shuddered with their movement. The ladder released suddenly, nearly taking him with it as it crashed down. Marcus climbed down so fast, he basically fell, landing hard on the alley pavement, his ankles screaming protest. He limped out onto 47th Street. The street was still empty. How was it still empty? It was New York City. There should be someone, anyone, a delivery driver, a late-night dog walker, a cab, but there was nothing. Just Marcus, limping down the middle of the street, looking back at his building and seeing them on the fire escape. At least a dozen figures all staring down at him, all pointing. His phone buzzed. Same unknown number. You can't leave the block, Marcus. Not until morning. That's the rule. Douglas's rule. The ones who are alone stay alone. The ones who watch midnight alone have to make it to dawn alone. Marcus kept moving, heading west toward 10th Avenue. Surely there would be people there, cars, something. His ankle throbbed with each step. Blood from his cut palm left a trail of dark drops on the sidewalk. He reached the corner and tried to turn right. His body wouldn't. It was like walking into an invisible wall, not solid, but resistant to pressure that increased the harder he pushed. The air itself seemed to thicken, pushing him back toward the center of the block. No. Marcus shoved against it using his shoulder. No, no, no. The resistance was absolute. He tried going south instead toward 46th Street. Same thing. The block had become a cage. His phone buzzed continuously now, message after message. The block remembers. 1987. Douglas chose 12 people. 12 who were alone. 12 who wouldn't be missed. Every year, the block takes 12 more. Payment for what was done. You're number 8, Marcus. 4 more to go. The block must have its 12. Marcus looked at the time, 2:13 a.m. Sunrise in New York in early January was around 7:20 a.m. 5 hours. He had to survive 5 hours. Behind him, the figures had descended to the street level. They moved in that too fluid way, covering ground faster than should be possible. Marcus ran toward the only place still showing signs of life, the building across the street. The Riverview Arms. The front door was open, not just unlocked, but hanging ajar, a dark mouth waiting. Marcus could hear sounds from inside, crying, screaming sounds of distress that had been going on so long they'd become white noise. He hesitated at the threshold. Every horror movie he'd ever seen screamed at him not to enter. But the things on the street were getting closer, and at least inside he might find answers. Might find a way to break whatever this was. Marcus stepped through. The lobby was from another time. Original molding from the 1880s, a mailbox wall with brass doors hanging open like little crypts. The elevator was broken, its doors permanently propped with a wooden block. A sign read, "Use stairs." He took the stairs. Each floor he passed showed doors hanging open, apartments empty but lived in. Lights on and some others dark. On the 4th floor landing, he saw dark stains on the wall that might have been paint or might have been something else. His ankle screamed with each step upward. 6th floor, apartment 614. The door was open. Light spilled out that same harsh fluorescent quality. Marcus stood in the doorway, breathing hard, his heart hammering. "Hello, Marcus," said a voice from inside. "We've been waiting. Come see what happens to the lonely ones." He stepped inside. The apartment was frozen in 1987. Marcus stood in the doorway, taking it in. Wood-paneled walls, a CRT television in the corner showing static, a rotary phone on a side table. Furniture with that particular aesthetic of the late 80s earth tones and geometric patterns. Everything covered in a fine layer of dust, except for one thing. The walls were covered in photographs, Polaroids. Hundreds of them taped edge to edge, creating a mosaic of faces. Marcus stepped closer, his breath catching. Every photograph showed the same thing, a person alone in their apartment. Some were eating dinner. Some were watching TV. Some were sleeping. All were unaware they were being photographed. In the corner of each Polaroid, a date was written in faded marker, NY 87, NYE 88, NYE 89, continuing all the way to NYE 23. Last year. These photographs had been taken last year. He watched them, said a voice behind Marcus. He spun around. The woman from the window stood there. Up close, Marcus could see she was translucent, not quite solid. Behind her, the little girl. Behind her, others. A dozen people, all flickering in and out of focus like bad reception. Douglas Klein, the woman continued. He lived here for 40 years, never married, never had friends, spent every New Year's Eve alone watching through his windows as other people celebrated. The jealousy ate him alive. 1987. The little girl said, her voice wrong, layered as if multiple people were speaking through her. He decided if he had to be alone, others would too. He went door to door, killed 12 people, all of them celebrating, all of them with friends, with family, with love. He took that from them. The police found him here, the woman said, surrounded by Polaroids he'd taken of his victims in the weeks before. He'd been watching them, learning their schedules. He hung himself from that beam before they could arrest him. Marcus looked up. A sturdy beam crossed the ceiling. He could see the mark where a rope had worn into the wood. But his death didn't end it, said a man Marcus recognized, the figure in pajamas. The block absorbed what he did, the hatred, the loneliness. Every year on New Year's Eve, the block takes 12 more. People who are alone. People no one will miss immediately. By the time anyone realizes they're gone, it's too late. We're trapped here, the woman said. In this building, on this block. Reliving it, until we can pass the curse on. Marcus backed toward the door. I won't. I'm not going to hurt anyone. You don't have to, the little girl said. The block does the choosing. The block does the taking. But someone has to witness it. Someone has to survive until morning to tell the story, to keep it going. That's the rule. 11 die. One lives. One escapes to remember. I didn't escape, Marcus said. I'm still here. You're still here, they echoed. It's 2:47 a.m., Marcus. 4.5 hours until sunrise. The question is, will you be number 8 or will you be number 12? The apartment door slammed shut. Marcus threw himself at the door. It wouldn't budge. He pounded on it, screaming, but his voice seemed to be absorbed by the walls, by the photographs, by the building itself. His phone buzzed. A different number this time. Emma. Hope surged through him. He answered. Emma, thank God Marcus. Her voice sounded distant, crackling. Marcus, where are you? I just got your voicemail. Are you okay? No, I'm not okay. I'm trapped in this building, and there are these things, and I don't know how to get out. What building, Marcus? You're scaring me. The Riverview Arms, across from my apartment. Please call the police. Tell them to come to 409 West 47th 6th floor. Static crackled on the line. Emma's voice cut in and out. Marcus, can't. You're breaking up. Emma, can you hear me? The line went dead. Marcus tried to call back. No signal. He checked the time, 3:33 a.m., 3.5 hours until sunrise. He looked at the translucent figures surrounding him. They were clearer now, more solid. What do you want from me? We want what Douglas wanted, the woman said. To not be alone, to have company in the dark. But you said someone has to survive. Someone has to witness. Someone does. The little girl smiled. But we never said it would be you. The photographs on the walls began to move. The people in them turned to face Marcus, their eyes opening, their mouths forming words he couldn't hear. New Polaroids began appearing, materializing out of nothing, filling the empty spaces on the walls. Marcus recognized the first new photograph immediately. It was him. in his apartment. Sitting on his couch 3 hours ago, drinking champagne, watching the ball drop on his laptop. Another photograph appeared. Him at the window looking out at the building across the street. Another. Him in the hallway staring at the scratched messages. Another. Him on the fire escape climbing down. "You've been taking pictures of me," Marcus whispered. "The block always documents its collection," the man in pajamas said. "Douglas started the tradition. The block continues it." Marcus's phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number. But this time, instead of a text, it was a photo. Marcus opened it with shaking hands. It showed him from behind, standing in this very apartment, surrounded by the translucent figures looking at his phone. The photo had been taken seconds ago, but there was no one else here. No one physical enough to hold a camera. The caption read, "Welcome home, Marcus. Apartment 614 has a new resident. The block thanks you for your service." Marcus looked down at his hands. They were becoming translucent. He could see through his fingers to the floor beneath. "No," he breathed. "No, this isn't. I'm not dead. I didn't die." "You died 3 hours ago," the woman said gently. "When you drank that champagne. The glass on your counter, you'll find it if you go back to your apartment. Antifreeze mixed with cheap champagne tastes almost the same. Your landlord put it there this afternoon. He always chooses one tenant for the block. That's his deal. That's how he gets to keep the building. But I ran. I climbed down. I'm here." "You've been here," the little girl said. "The running, the escape, the fear that was your dying dream. Your brain's last desperate attempt to survive. But your body is in apartment 609, slumped on the couch, dead since 12:47 a.m. Marcus looked at his phone. The time read 12:47 a.m. It hadn't moved. It had never moved. He'd been staring at the same time for hours, dying slowly, while his consciousness constructed an elaborate narrative of escape. Through the window, he could see his own apartment building. On the 6th floor in apartment 609, emergency lights were starting to flash. Someone had found him. "Welcome to the block, Marcus," the figures said in unison. "Someone has to watch. Someone has to keep count. Next year, you'll help us choose number 8. The sun would rise in 4 hours. Marcus had an eternity to wait.